Hello, I'm Aline Crooks and welcome to FD54 Shoulder Bag Assembly. Our first lesson is we're going to start with the shoulder bag. We're going to assemble the cargo pocket here. We're going to add the velcro loops. We're going to do the pleats for the cargo pocket and then set it onto the front section of the bag. We'll start with, when you start with your sewing machine, you want to start and make sure that you've changed the needle to a size 16. The numbers here come up, it's in a green case, a number size 16 right here. They are a heavier needle. You want to make sure that your machine is threaded and operating properly. The first piece that we'll begin with is the cargo pocket. The top is the side with the biggest cutout. The bottom has the smallest. You're going to fold this in half and then start with the seam up here at the top. You're going to sew at the notch down past a ½ inch here and stop and back stitch, and then we'll sew up at the notch in the bottom. We'll sew past the cutout and back stitch, securing our seam. You want to remember to get your thread up under your presser foot and then hold for the first 2 stitches when you're starting your seam. And then when you back tack, you're going to press the reverse for about 3 stitches and then come back up. And you can use the hand wheel to finish. Pull the fabric out from the back and cut. This is our first seam for the pleats. You can finger press these and fold them down at the notches. Now, the next step can be done from the wrong side of the fabric. You're going to press this down flat, and then we'll be tacking the pleats down for our cargo pocket. You can reverse and trying to follow the same line. Then when you do the other side, you can also, if you have difficulty reversing, you can walk it to the edge and turn the piece around and then start from the front. But you want 2 rows of stitching on top of each other to secure your cargo pocket pleat. So from the front, it's going to look like this. If you'll notice, the longer edge is the top side of the pocket and the bottom edge is the shorter side. Now, the next step we're going to do is you can clip your threads here. You're going to take the top edge and we're going to turn it a 1/2 inch . And then you can also turn it again a 1/2 inch. And we're going to use 2 rows of top stitching starting on the turned edge first. You want to make sure you still have it at a 1/2 inch turn, and that will give you a 1/2 inch hem up at the top. The next row of top stitching is on the other side. Now this would finish the first couple of steps of our cargo pocket. The next step would be is we want to line up the velcro for our pocket. And you'll have a bag of supplies or finds that comes with your bag. You want to find the velcro squares that are in white. So you're going to take those two and you're going to sew the part that has the rough side, and we're going to have it line up a 1/2 inch in, or actually it's 3/4 of an inch in from the sides and about 1/8 of an inch down from your top stitching. Now hold on to the other loop because we're going to use that for the flap of the pocket. So you're going to sew the velcro on. This is the time when you can change the thread to white, or you can use black thread too. But you want to start at one of the corners . And you'll sew around all 4 sides of the velcro, coming to the end. You'll do both sides. I'm going to go about 3/4 of an inch from the edge. Here's where you can clip your threads. And also too, you can pull the threads to the other side and clip them. Okay, once we get this assembled, we're going to put it aside and start with the pocket flap. The pocket flap, I have one here already that is already sewn and turned. The pieces are here. You're going to have two pocket flap pieces. You're going to put them together with right sides together, and you're going to sew a 1/2 inch seam allowance on 3 sides. So we're going to start at this side, go down one of the long sides, and then finish up on the shorter side. Now when you go to turn this, there's no need to run all the way off the edge. You'll turn but when you turn your corners for your 1/2 inch seam allowance, you want to make sure that your needle is down so it marks your place. So you'll have a 1/2 inch seam allowance on 3 sides of your pocket flap, leaving the top open. From this step, what you'll do is you will clip and mortar your corners so that they can be turned, and then you'll press. So you'll press, turn and press your pocket flap. When that's finished, you're going to take your piece and you're going to do 2 rows of top stitching, starting with the outside edge. And again, when you get to the edge, you want to put your needle in the edge and turn your piece. You don't want to run off the edge of the fabric. Second row of top stitching, I'm going to line up the edge of my foot with the first row of top stitching right here. Now that we've assembled both parts of our cargo pocket, we have the pocket and the flap, we can set our cargo pocket onto our shoulder bag. The finished step looks like this. We've set the cargo pocket at the punch marks on your flap and then the back piece. So we'll put the flap and the loop velcro aside. We will take our front flap piece that has our punch holes here, the 4 punch holes for our pocket, and we're going to turn our pocket a 1/2 inch on all 3 sides that are left. You're going to turn this and press it, and then sew the pocket onto the front flap. Now you want to back stitch after the first 3 stitches. And you want to make sure you've got a 1/2 inch turned. And you can tuck all the threads in too as you go. Now the second row of top stitching is going to line up by the first. You'll double stitch and do 2 rows of top top stitching around the edges of your pocket. Then, after you've set your cargo pocket, it should look like this. Oh. It should look similar to this after you've set your cargo pocket with your Velcro. After you've done this and you have your flap done, the next step is to double check the Velcro setting, double check the size of your flap, make sure your flap isn't too big or too small, that it just covers the edges of your cargo pocket. If you find that the cargo pocket is bigger or the flap is, there are different sizes, what you'll need to do is rip open one of the side seams on the flap and then adjust your seam allowances and double check the size of your flap. But at this point, you're going to double check size of the flap, size of the pocket, and then also the setting on your Velcro. What you want to do is line up the edges of the flap with the edges of your Velcro here, and you're going to line it up here. You'll make a dot where your corner of your Velcro is. You can take a pin and make a dot. And then you'll mark both sides where your Velcro on your lower corner. Then you can take the loop and sew the Velcro loop onto your pocket flap. Again, you want to go around all four sides and then double back over the first side that you did to secure the edges. Trim the threads. Once you've set the Velcro, what you want to do is double check. Now we're going to make our marks for our seam. You want to set the pocket. You'll get a ruler. You're going to line up your pocket so your flap, or so your ruler is a 1/2 inch down from the corner. You'll make a mark. And then you'll make a mark on the other side. At these points, this is where you want to turn the pocket over and line up to sew your pocket flap seam. We're going to be sewing across this way. And also too, to double check it, the pocket, the raw edge of the pocket flap should be almost 1 inch above the top edge of the pocket, of the cargo pocket. Now when you're done with this seam, you'll pull the flap down and sew it. You'll pull the flap down and sew it from the other side, a 1/2 inch away from this seam here. Are we getting... Now this covers the raw edge of the pocket, so we didn't have to overlock the raw edge of the pocket, because when you sew this back down with your top stitching, you're encasing the raw edge of the flap. So this is the first step. This is our cargo pocket with our Velcro and our pocket flap. The next step is going to be to putting in or setting our Velcro, or excuse me, our button loops. And then we will be sewing our zippered our inside pocket with the zipper, and then attaching that to the lining and sewing the lining to our flap with, and then turning it with our 2 rows of top stitching. We have 2 pieces, actually there's three pieces of web that are similar in your bag. You want the 2 longer pieces. The shorter piece is used for the L-square carrier, which is on another section of the bag. But you want to make sure for our button loops that we use the 2 8-inch pieces of web. Also, too, the ends of the web unravel when you just cut them with scissors. You want to make sure after you get your supplies that you take a lighter and that you just quickly burn the edges of your web. You don't want to do it too much because it'll get really hot. You just have to do it enough so it doesn't unravel. And then when you're done, you'll have a clean piece of webbing and there'll be no unraveling on your edges. So after we've prepped these 2 pieces, we're going to take our 8 inches, we're going to fold them, fold them into loops so you'll match the edges together, and then you've created a little loop piece. You're going to sew that on the edge of the bag and line up the furthest edge with the pocket. So what we're doing now is we're stay stitching your web loops. And it doesn't matter if the loop is like this or if the loop is like that. As long as it's folded down to where you have this point and the triangle and the point. And then it's lined up with the edge of your cargo pocket. You only have to sew this once because it's going to be caught into the seam when we sew the lining. Now this piece you can set aside when we do the zipper. So the zipper pocket will look like this when finished. And there's 2 pieces to it. The pieces, you have a longer piece and then the shorter piece up on the top. And then after we apply the zipper, this folds up and we sew the side seams together. We'll apply the zipper to the sides where the notches here are marked at 1 inch. You are going to use your 9-inch white zipper. What we'll do is we'll line it up. We're going to line up this part here, this part with the notch on the tape with the longer side of the zipper. And now it's time to put in the 9-inch zipper. But before we do that, we're going to need to change the zipper foot. It can either be a left or right-handed zipper foot. It doesn't matter as long as you can get close enough to the needle and it has just this one sled. So there we go. After you've changed the foot to a zipper foot, you want to line up your zipper with the coils going to the wrong side. You want to sew in the middle of the tape. When you get close to the zipper head, you want to stop the machine and put the needle down, raise the foot, unzip your zipper, and then finish sewing it. When you've gotten the first side done, you're going to flip it over. You can zip the zipper back up, but we're going to flip this over to the right side and we're going to top stitch what we've just sewn. Again, we can zip the zipper down to move past the zipper head. Sew a little bit, stop with the needle in the fabric, zip the zipper back up. This completes one side of the zipper. For the other side, we'll do the same thing. We're going to line the zipper up like we did on the other side, where the 1-inch notches are. And we'll set it to where we sew in the middle of the tape. Same as we did on the other side, turn it over. We're going to top stitch on the other side. This is a different application because it's a bag. We do not want to have the fabric overlapping. So we're doing a different application because it's a soft goods. So we don't want the fabric to impede with the zipper, so we're top stitching this back away from the coils. Again, when we get close to the zipper head, stop the machine so the needle's down into the fabric, Then we'll unzip, and then you can finish your top stitching. When your zipper's done, you're going to fold this, and we'll get ready to sew our side seams. But before we sew the side seams, we're going to have to change back to our regular foot. So we'll change back to our regular zipper foot, or excuse me, we'll change back to our regular foot. Once we have our regular foot on, we're going to sew 1/2 inch seam allowance down the sides, and you can back tack at the end of the pocket. Once you get to this part, the start of the zipper, you want to unzip the zipper head and then finish sewing your side seam. After this is done, you're going to turn your pocket Now it's ready to be sewn onto the front lining of the bag. We're ready to sew it onto our front lining piece. The front lining piece is the piece that has a center notch and then 2 notches here on the side. We'll line it up. Oh, it also has a center notch right here. This is where we're going to line up our pocket. Your pocket should have a center notch right here. We're going to line these 2 up and sew it on. With the zipper face down. You want to have a 1/2 inch seam allowance or less, because this is stay stitching. Now we can sew our lining onto our flap. We'll sew it with wrong sides out and right sides together. Your pocket is going to be on the inside. We're going to start to sew a 1/2 inch down and a 1/2 inch in. Now you want to sew this with no pins. What you want to do is line up 6 inches ahead and hold on, keeping your hands on the top. You don't want to pull or stretch around the curve. If you'd like, you can walk it around the curves too. But remember to rest your foot on the treadle as you go when you're walking it. And again, you're going to stop 1/2 inch down and a 1/2 inch in. When your piece looks like this and you've sewn your lining on, what you should do next to reduce bulk in the curves is you're going to clip away some of the fabric from around the curve. You only have to do this at the curves. And you still want to leave 1/4 inch seam allowance around your curves. Once that is done, you'll turn the bag lining to the right sides. You'll turn the bag right side out. This is where you would want to press your bag so that the seams are flat . So once you get it all pressed flat, we want to sew stitch this seam down and secure the pocket. But before we can do that, we need to clip here, we need to clip to release the seam allowance. That way we can turn this our 1/2 inch to sew it down, and we can pull this out for our seam allowance for our sides. Once we have that clipped, we're going to stitch the flap down, or the lining down to our flap. This can be done in white thread. It should look like this, with the bag going towards the inside of the bag and then the flap going over the top. To finish this up, you do 2 rows of top stitching along the edge of the bag. And you can start on one of the upper corners. Again, you'll have this pressed. You'll start on the upper corner, and you want to start on the outside edge. Again, you can walk it around the corners. You want to start the second row at the same corner you started the first. You'll line it up with your foot. You'll line up the second row of top stitching. You'll line up with the first. I ran out of bobbin thread again. When you're done, the finished sample or the finished set should look like this. With the pocket sewn to the inside and the zipper facing up. And this ends the first steps of the sewing bag construction.